I wanted to put this panel together. I wanted to bring these fine people out to talk with the filmmakers who happen to be walking the floor and thinking, how could I ever possibly afford this equipment, and how it applies to my project as a filmmaker. Each of these funds will and do provide opportunities for emerging filmmakers to access equipment, to make projects, and do just a variety of other things that's going to help them drive their artistic careers forward. So I want to introduce you to them. We're going to talk about what they do, what kind of projects they're seeking, and how to best approach them, when to approach them based on deadlines. And depending on if you are one of the few who are fortunate enough to get a micro meeting, some of these people will be talking at the in the general area, the February freeze area. In the bar, we have tables set aside for those micro meetings. So if you do have a micro meeting with one of these panelists, that will be the point to go. At your designated time, you have 10 minutes to talk with them directly, face to face. Make sure you bring your business cards. Connect and network, that's what this day is all about for the independent filmmaker. So without further ado, let's meet the panelists. First, we have John Galway from the Harold Greenberg Fund. We've got Rachel Feldbloom-Wood from bravoFACT. We've got Corey Vidal, who's a YouTuber and a successful crowdfunder. Very important for independent filmmakers to understand the benefits and the risks of crowdfunding, so I'm very happy that he was able to come out and help us out. And Maya Bedward from the Ontario Arts Council. And lastly, Dan Lyon from Telefilm. So each of these funds offer different levels of funding for different types of projects, so it kind of falls on the filmmaker to understand which fund is best aligned for their project. I think one of the biggest things that an independent filmmaker can do is their research and prepare as best as you can when you're putting your application together. So I think it's super great that this many people have showed up to actually listen to these fine people talk. I'm assuming, and based on the response that we got from the micro meetings, there are a lot of projects that are ready to go and are looking for funding, so I hope this is beneficial. So without further ado, we're just going to kind of ask each of these people to introduce themselves and what their fund does. Let's start with John.
I'm John Galway, and I work at the Harold Greenberg Fund. The Harold Greenberg Fund has, its main focus is on feature films. It has development money for screenplay writing and packaging, and also optioning books or nonfiction works or articles, development through writing and packaging, and then production funding for features. We also have a program called the Shorts to Features, which helps fund a short and develop a related feature to it at the same time, so that the short becomes a proof of concept for that feature.
Hi, I'm Rachel Feldbloom-Wood. I work at bravoFACT. So bravoFACT essentially has two funding streams. We fund short narrative films of up to 10 minutes and short documentary films of up to 15 minutes. So we have two deadlines for each stream per year. They sort of rotate, so fact, factual, and we also hold pitch contests. We partner with different film festivals and organizations, and that's sort of an extra opportunity at funding on a smaller scale, because we get a lot of applications to our year-round deadlines, and the pitch pools tend to be a little bit smaller. Our next deadline is for factual, and it's February 24th, so if there's any documentary filmmakers, we'd encourage you to apply.
My name is Corey Vidal. I'm actually, I don't represent a specific fund. I'm a YouTuber. I've been making YouTube content for the past 11 years and living off of it for the past 9. I started a production company, and so my team and I come together to write and shoot and edit and produce content. Usually it goes on my YouTube channel, but sometimes for other companies, other brands, and there's a lot of different ways we found making money and sustaining off of that. I'm here specifically today because in 2013, we decided that we wanted to make a feature-length documentary explaining what a YouTuber is and how the hell YouTubers make any money and why the hell anybody watches. because that's a conversation that I have a lot in my life, is like how serious this is. So we launched an Indiegogo campaign on January 15th, 2013, and in 16 days we raised $200,000 from our fans, and we used that to go on the road and film and edit for 6 months. We released a trailer that got 1 million views in the first day, and then Morgan Spurlock came on and executive produced the rest of the film, and it came out at Tribeca last year. And then YouTube Red bought it, and then now it's out.
What's it called?
It's called Vlogumentary.
My name is Maya Bedward, and I work for the Ontario Arts Council. And we're an organization that funds independent artists. We have a Media Artist Projects grant for emerging mid-career and established artists. We've had similar programs in the past, but this is a new program that we've redesigned for applicants to apply either in the spring, in April, or in the fall, I believe in November. And we fund shorts or features. Depending on which category you fit in, you're eligible for a certain amount of funding. But a good thing to keep in mind is we only fund production and post-production. We do not fund development.
Hello, I'm Dan Lyon. I got a better mic than you.
Yeah, way better.
I'm the regional feature film executive for Ontario and Nunavut for Telefilm Canada. Telefilm is an agency of the federal Canadian government, and in feature films we're involved in development, production, and distribution. We also administer the Canada Media Fund. The Canada Media Fund is actually a much larger fund than Telefilm's fund, and it supports mainly television. In TV, the key thing to remember is that you normally need a broadcaster to access funds. There are some exceptions to that. In features, because I think most people in the room are primarily interested in production, I'll say that there are 3 levels of funding: micro budget, lower budget, and national. Our micro budget program is a partnership with about 45 schools and institutions and co-ops across Canada. Each one of them does a call for applications and selects one project to submit to Telefilm, and then our jury picks from among those projects. We're able to fund about 1 in 3. The next step up, lower budget, which is the program I manage, is for films budgeted between $250,000 and $2.5 million. That is not in association with any other organization, and in fact, it's a single decision maker model. So we have 4 decision makers in 4 regions of Canada. Each decision maker has their own budget and decides how to properly allocate those dollars. And then the National Fund is for very experienced filmmakers making higher budget feature films. So an example of a movie that's coming out soon would be Goon 2. That would be in our National Fund. These are films expected to perform well at the box office as well as to be artistically satisfying.
Seems to be a good mix between shorts and features. Certainly, bravoFACT's focus is purely shorts, where Telefilm's focus seems to be purely on the features side. Is there any, with the Arts Council as an example, or with Corey and what you've seen online, is there any definitive evidence as to what is the best pursuit for an emerging filmmaker, be it features, a first-time filmmaker making their first feature, or a first-time filmmaker making their first short, given that there are certain funds available specifically for those things? Is there any reason why Telefilm has opted to not support shorts, or is there any reason why bravoFACT has opted not to support features?
Well, let me approach it a different way. I mean, I do watch a lot of short films. It's very important that when a team approaches Telefilm, that the director in particular has done some work before, but the definition of work is very, very elastic. So as an example, we were very happy last year to work with a director named Director X, who has a long, long resume doing music videos, and we helped him with his first feature. So we see people who have experience in web series, people who have experience in television, people who have experience making what I would affectionately call a credit card feature, or of course shorts, which are a very traditional way of entering into the feature business. Artistically, shorts are their own animal. It's a very, very different art form. It's not easy to make a compelling short, and we have huge respect for people who can do it. But a great short or a couple shorts that have received play at a few festivals, maybe even won some awards, those are great calling cards into other areas of the business.
I would echo that, actually. Often bravoFACT films are sort of a calling card. We really encourage emerging filmmakers to apply. We do fund people at all experience levels, but they're basically, an emerging filmmaker has a fair shot at getting funded based on the script or the outline, even if they don't have too much experience behind them. And we do ask for somebody that's new to the field to bring on a mentor, so that there's another set of eyes on the project and somebody sort of making sure that it's broadcast quality. But yeah, we fund shorts exclusively.
Yes. And so, Corey, given your experience in the online world, do you see we hear the buzzword is always attention span online. Do you see the benefit in shorts or features, or is that even applicable? Is it based on content?
I really see it based on content. I mean, I think it would be kind of ignorant of like a YouTube influencer or a YouTuber to say that they're not necessarily interested in feature-length content. That being said, I think the definition of things are changing. This, just like the definition of television has changed in the past decade. I have some YouTube videos that are over 2 hours long. It's feature length, it's not actually a movie. And people watch it all the way through, and YouTube shows me the analytics of that retention rate. And because of that loyal audience that keeps coming back to watch the content, they dedicated the time to watch this 2 hour long, a number of 2 hour long videos. And the one I'm thinking of as an example has over 100,000 views on my channel. So I do think a lot of these definitions are really up in the air. But going back to what I think is beneficial to the people in the room, that experience that I think everybody up here is looking for, anybody that's kind of holding a purse to fund something. I think YouTube gives you, or any site really, I'm not trying to shill them, but YouTube, Vimeo, whatever, gives you that opportunity to make even a micro short film. I have videos that are 60 seconds long, and it would be almost too kind to even call it a short film.
Yes.
It's a thought, it's a concept. It's a vine, but longer than 6 seconds. It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yes.
But it was an opportunity to get my hands on a camera and collaborate and shoot. And having made a couple hundred videos, I used that experience when I made my first feature film. And I just knew I needed to light it better and shoot it better. And I would dedicate more time to it. But I had that experience from having made YouTube shorts for so long.
Are we, and this is I guess for the panelists that are actually looking at the filmmakers coming up for the proper practical funding model, are we at in a world now where YouTube viewership is a commodity that can be banked on as much as festival screenings for short films? A filmmaker opts to skip film festivals and go directly to YouTube or Vimeo to try and drive up a view count. Is that something that is preferential now to be able to get eyes on a project? John?
Sure. Well, I would say that our fund, the model is, I'm trying to answer both questions at the same time. Our model is moving more towards what I would call an IP-based model. So we're developing concepts ideally aimed at features because that's our core business and our strength, but they can go different ways and they can come from different areas. So we've been, we developed a feature film based on a series of graphic novels called Kill Shakespeare. I don't think it's going to be a feature. I think in the end it's going to be a television series. but that's part of the process, right?
Yes.
And as we're developing this IP too, we're looking at the different ways it can be exploited. So it could be exploited as a short that may then lead to a feature. It could be done through Vimeo and YouTube instead of traditional distribution. A lot of the stuff that Dan and our fund are working on in terms of the micro budget stuff, there's no expectation of theatrical distribution. It's more expected that it'll be a combination of festivals and digital distribution. So I think that whole landscape is just jello, and wherever something goes, something goes.
Yes. A big hurdle for a lot of the filmmakers in the audience is going to be understanding the language of these funds and the purpose, for sure. I imagine something like a proof of concept would be a nail in the coffin for the OAC, as opposed to something that would be viewed as a benefit for Harold Greenberg. Is that where you're going? Or are you guys strictly looking for the overall art and not worrying about where the film ends up? Because a lot of filmmakers have commercial intentions. Would that preclude them from accessing somewhere like the Ontario Arts Council?
Yeah, I think the way to look at the Ontario Arts Council is to really think about it not as a place to come to get your foot in the industry and to become involved in the industry. It's really about having a burning concept, a burning story inside of you that you need to tell. So again, that's why I wouldn't say shorts do better than features. It's really about, first and foremost, what is that story you need to tell? And that's what we're looking for, the artistry in the piece that you're coming to us with. And we don't accept even calling card films. So if this is a film that you eventually want to make into a feature, that's not what we're looking for. We want this to be a standalone piece, and that's really important to us. So, and then another thing to think about, because before we were talking about feature and shorts, viability is important for us though, but viability is really looking at your budget and your timeline and your crew. If you're an emerging artist, you can come to us for up to 10 grand. So reasonably, what can you do with 10 grand and maybe some other sources of financing you can find? As a mid-career and established, you can come to us for up to 40 grand. And for mid-career and established filmmakers, we don't fund projects that cost more than $300,000. So we're not looking at big budget feature projects. And for emerging filmmakers, your film can't be more than $75,000. So it gives you a sense of where you could fit into the OAC.
And for those that are certainly going to ask the question, what are you defining as your cutoff points for your emerging talent under the OAC?
So what we really put the onus on the applicant to make that decision. For an emerging artist, the bar is really low in terms of entry. You have to have made one independent film before applying, and that's a film that you directed and that was not something you made with a broadcaster, that was something you didn't make in school, so it has to be one independent piece. You need that in order to be eligible to apply to the council. And then for mid-career established, it can be 2 or more. So you have to have made 2 or more. But it depends. It depends where you feel you fit more appropriately in terms of your career. So we let you make that decision. But if you think that, like for mid-career and established, you're against some really, some artists who've been around for a long time. So you have to think about, how your work will fare against people in that second category. So, but we let the artist decide.
How difficult is it to fundraise online? A lot of people are probably adding that into and I've certainly seen applications that have Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding in general added to their main package. Is it as easy as it looks?
So to answer that question, I need to talk about what not my experience, the experience that I've heard from other people. Because to distill it down to a single sentence, if you know famous people, it's easy. It's a piece of cake, and you get all your famous friends to tweet it, and boom, you've just funded your film. So the question is, how easy is it to know famous people? And I don't know the answer to that question. I joined YouTube at the right time.
Yes.
So for me, when I launched my Indiegogo campaign, I was a YouTuber and I had cast other YouTubers in it. I created the campaign page in about an hour, launched it, and by that night we had made $60,000. So I would say it was pretty easy. But I would also say that kind of, there is a philosophy underneath that, which is networking and relationships, being in the right place at the right time, being lucky. I joined YouTube really early. I met the right YouTubers. They happen to be friends of mine. So to recreate that, it would just be, hey, do you know somebody with millions of followers on Twitter? Great, use them. But another thing that you could do is look at, as long as they are talented enough, and that is a whole another conversation, but if they're talented enough, casting an influencer in your film. If they fit the role, if they fit the part, if they already have a built-in audience. And that's how all of this YouTube content is created now. The benefit being that, I have 250,000 subscribers on YouTube. I am, the creator and the producer and the talent, but I'm also the distributor. So I could theoretically make something really crappy and upload it, and it would get views. They wouldn't like it,
Yes.
But that audience is guaranteed. It's built in. And I'm by no means an A-list YouTuber, not even close. And so in casting or putting them in, I happen to find it really easy to guarantee those views, which can help guarantee funding or help do the fundraising part of it.
So, Dan, hearing that, how much weight would Telefilm put into a funding application that had a major component of their raise being crowdfunding that has yet to actually been achieved?
It's a really great question. I mean, the most successful crowdfunding campaign that I'm aware of in our local community was for one of our films. It's a film called How to Plan an Orgy in a Small Town. And John's fund and my fund were both involved in that film. Local filmmaker Jeremy Lalonde raised about $130,000 for his low-budget film. His secret sauce, just to continue a little bit of a riff on what Corey said, was that he had already cast his film at the time he launched his crowdfunding campaign, and his actors were not superstars, but they were known actors, mainly from television series. And each one of them used social media to say, hey, check out this campaign, and they also appeared on camera. So that was tremendously valuable. So to respond specifically to your question, if I were to see in a finance plan crowdfunding $130,000, I would meet with the people. I would ask them, why they were so confident of reaching a goal, which actually is a very, very high goal. In terms of actual, more practical success rates, I think a goal of raising $25,000 or $30,000 would be more normal. And if somebody included that in a finance plan, I would say, go give it a try, but I also need you to have a plan B.
Yes.
So if you're not successful at all, what are you going to do to replace that $25,000 or $30,000? The answer, by the way, might be quite easy. It might be that they'll replace that money with their own money, whether it's an investment or whether it's deferrals or whether they have an investor waiting in the wings.
Excellent. So we are getting close to the stage where there are questions. Is there anybody here who has a question for these funds that is not specifically related to something that could be covered in a 10-minute micro meeting?
Hi, I am Ashka Bobinska, and I'm making 2 virtual reality documentary movies. And my question is if any of you can help with that.
So funding virtual reality.
One is short, one is feature.
So
Basically, our films, so we have all media rights. We take all media rights to the films. So we may air them interstitially between other programming on our specialty channels at Bell Media, but for the most part, they live online. And what that means right now is that the films are on YouTube and they're linked on our website. And down the line, we'll have a new online hub to showcase that work. In terms of VR, it's something that we have received that question. But because we're not sure how the future of our online platform will work, we don't know if we can support that kind of work, but it's something we're really interested in. So right now we wouldn't be able to say yes, but you never know what can happen down the line.
And I would just kind of chime in that there is a difference between VR and 360-degree video. So virtual reality means you can navigate and move around inside of it and kind of actually interact with it or pick stuff up. The 360-degree video, at least the way YouTube defines it, YouTube already supports that. So you can use stuff like Google Cardboard, where you have a left eye and a right eye, just the two, and put that in, and that's 3D. And then if you can look all the way around, it's 360 degree. And then if you're interacting with it, it's virtual reality or alternate reality.
You might also try the National Film Board or the Bell Fund. They both have programs that look at VR.
And we definitely will. Yes, yeah.
Great. The panelists today are a small portion of funds available. We just don't have a big enough stage, and we couldn't get the shop busy enough to be working while we're here. Any other questions? Phil?
Hi. I'm very curious about the synergy between all of you, because you're watching a film or a TV series, and at the end you see either bravoFACT and Telefilm together, or you see the ApprenticeA Fund or Telefilm together. So how does that work? Do you need to go through one to get to the other, or the other to get to one, or?
Well, we're not involved in short films, so you're not going to see bravoFACT and Telefilm together. We often are involved with the Greenberg Fund, with the Ontario Film Development Corporation, certainly with tax credits, both provincial and federal, and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, which is very important for people who want to shoot in Sault Ste. Marie or Sudbury or Timmins or other places in Northern Ontario. Each agency makes its own independent decision, and you definitely need to apply separately to each institution, which means you need to go online, figure out the deadlines, and figure out the guidelines for each one. There is some informal discussion between the decision makers of the individual groups. And the reason for that is I would call it professional courtesy, in terms of, well, what are you excited about? What are you excited about? And we have a vested interest in saying yes to projects that have a strong likelihood of being successful. And by that I mean that their financing is going to be completed if we say yes. But in my case, I would say that when I meet with the teams, I'm always very careful when we go through the finance plan to ask them about their plan B and their plan C. So just as an example, if they have the Greenberg Fund in their finance plan, I will ask them, first of all, if they're aware of the guidelines of the fund, and one of their requirements is that they needed to have had some development money before they go in for production. And I have to say, probably 50% of the time, the young teams, the emerging teams, were not aware of that. So immediately we need to go to plan B. And it's the same for every piece of financing, really to make sure that that they're going to be able to fulfill the requirements, and also because all of these funds, except for tax credits, are selective, meaning that it's not automatic funding, and there's lots of competition for all of the funds that are available. You definitely need to have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D.
At the Ontario Arts Council, for us, it's very important that the artist has full control over the project, that they own the IP, that it's their independent work. So as a result, projects that have a broadcaster attached, or someone like the National Film Board, we see that as potentially compromising the artist's ability to really do what it is they want. Like, they have to collaborate, and so we don't fund those projects. So from beginning to end, you have to be doing this work independently. So you might see other Arts Council money involved, but if it's a broadcaster like bravoFACT, we just don't, it just wouldn't work for us, so wouldn't be eligible.
The way the Greenberg Fund at least works is it's associated with Bell Media and the movie network, and they have a first look at projects, but they don't always take it. So we did a very low budget project called The Lockpicker, and Dan, you were involved in that as well. Randall Okita's film, and both arts councils, I think, were in it. So there are ways often to find the right model. It's just it has to be the right project.
Yeah, so I would say if you're thinking about doing something like that, contact the media arts officer at the Ontario Arts Council. His name's Mark Haslam, because often artists won't be aware that certain collaborations would actually jeopardize eligibility. And even if it's something that you hadn't planned for when you apply to the OAC and you get your grant, but it's something that happens after the fact, you might have to return that funding. So it's really important that you have that conversation with Mark before you bring in before you change your finance plan after receiving an OAC grant. So just something to keep in mind to make sure you have that conversation.
It leads to the discussion of creative control. We're not Paramount or Universal or Disney. We don't behave like a studio. We're a funder. We provide people with as much or as little help as they need. And we normally take the same approvals that any financier would take in terms of script and cast and choice of director and so on. As a matter of course, we're involved in screening different cuts of the film, but we certainly don't have final cut. The creators have final cut, and therefore the creators have full control.
So we do provide notes on each cut. The way that we award our grants is that we provide up to $50K for a project. It can be less, but up to 50. And then we pay in a drawdown system. So there are 4 installments, 40% upon agreement, and then 20, 20, and 20 upon final delivery. So we do have some, we provide notes and we do discuss the creative elements of the film. We approve changes to the film, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it is your work, and we would defer to your artistic opinion. But it is in our agreement that we could interject if we saw a large flaw. For factual, we actually have a consultant, Bob Culbert, and he has amazing perspective on documentary. He's worked in the field for years, and he provides really extensive feedback notes to the filmmakers, and we've found that it's really elevated the quality of the films. They're excellent. Actually, they're all on our YouTube channel, or most of them, and you should really check it out.
I wanted to make a very strong impression in terms of what William F. White does. So we brought Corey in and we showed him what we do, and we showed him the real prices of equipment, and got his experience, or got him some experience on that high-end equipment. I guess what we're aiming to do, what I'm aiming to do, is have all filmmakers, anybody who's considering applying to these funds, to come in before they make their applications and do their due diligence and see, what kind of numbers they need to put into their budget. Can you just kind of speak to your program's, auditing abilities, or if it's something that it falls on the filmmaker, if we can reinforce that so the filmmakers understand how important it is to come in and talk, simply because this is my full-time job. This is what I'm wanting every one of you in the film or in the room to do. If you are considering applying to one of these funds, I strongly encourage it, and it will not put me out at all to have these conversations with you. But it'd be great to hear from the funders how you audit your applications and whether or not you have time to go line by line through budgets. Start on John.
Well, we're a staff of 2, and the national fund across the country. We look at last year 390 applications, so we don't look at budgets line by line. We do generally, we always read the material, the discussion with the filmmaker about the project, and then see if the budget at the highest level makes sense and whether it's financeable. Knowing, of course, that often budgets happen to equal finance. You can only raise so much money, therefore that's the money that you have to spend on the film. And we expect the creative team to make it work. And if you don't make it work, it'll be a challenge for next time. So in other words, if you go way over budget, you're going to have to pay for the over budget amount because, you know, we're most likely at our capped amount, and you're going to have to finance that, and then next time we're not going to trust you so much.
That's similar to how it works at bravoFACT as well. Like I said, we do offer 50K, but the total budget can be higher if you can sort of show us in your finance scenario where those other, where the, you know, where your resources will come from. So personal investments, other funders, all of that is fine. The one thing to keep in mind, just going back to that question about crossover, is that we take certain rights to the film. So we're totally happy to see another financer listed, but we just need to make sure that the rights will all sort of jive. But in terms of the budget, we don't go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We do look at it, but the thing that really decides whether or not projects are going to get funded is the script or the outline, depending on if it's fact or factual. And the budget needs to make sense, but we're not going to, we spend more time looking at the creative than we do at the numbers.
We dig in a little more carefully into the business affairs, which include the budget. So although we don't purport to, you know, to know whether somebody should be spending $1,000 or $1,800 to rent a particular piece of equipment, there's certain fundamental things that we would look for. So for example, if there's going to be music in the film, making sure that the music budget isn't $2,000 because the music's going to cost money. Making sure that there's a contingency. Making sure that there's room for unit publicity. And certain other things that we look very carefully at. Obviously, if somebody claims that they're hiring a certain leading performer or performers who we know are going to cost some money, and if we look at the budget and see that there's only $2,000 to pay, you know, the actors, then we're going to ask some questions. At the back end, there's a final cost report. So we do make sure that people have spent the money in the way that they've promised to spend it.
We do that too.
At the Ontario Arts Council, for every deadline, we bring in a jury. And the jury is made up of other artists, media artists, filmmakers. And they watch all this, they read all the applications, they watch all the material, and they look at your project in terms of three things. One of them being artistic merit, which is very important. Another one is the impact this project will have on your career, on the sector, on the genre, on a variety of things. And the third is viability, and that's when they're really looking at your budget and your timelines. And there's always someone on the jury who's the budget person, and we'll go through them quite extensively. So I recommend that if you're coming to the OAC for a grant, the best thing you can do is actually share your application with your peers, because it will be other filmmakers like themselves sitting on the jury. So they'll probably be able to best gauge whether or not you're spending too little or too much on different budget items, whether you're missing certain lines, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the best way to do it before you come into the OAC, because it is other artists like yourself evaluating your application.
So just to look at it from the fundraising perspective, now I don't work for Indiegogo or Kickstarter, nor do I really care. But I could picture myself sitting in the crowd right now. I think one of the benefits, although I'm not saying that that you should do this, if you do a fundraiser, you don't need to fill out any paperwork for anything ever. That's your money, and it's yours, and no one judges anything, and nobody approves anything, and you just go make your thing. If you get your funding, that can also be for better or worse. Yes, I'm kind of making a joke out of that, but at the same time, having had done that, I don't think I would do that on my next film. I don't regret doing it, but the advice that I would have been able to get by partnering with people here can really be worth it, because I went into making a movie having no idea how to make a movie, and I stumbled my way through it and I pulled it off. But I could have saved myself a lot of mistakes by doing that due diligence that you're talking about. We set our budget of $200,000 and we raised it, and our numbers were way off, way off. And any of these people would have stopped us. Luckily, we pulled it off, but could have been a disaster. So I wanted to, get that thought in your head that you don't necessarily need to do this paperwork, but in doing so, there are more benefits than just money. You're building relationships, you're meeting these people, and they can help you make that product.
And I think you have to remember, no matter what well you go to, you may want to go back, right? So deliver under promise, over deliver. Because you're right. You're building up relationships to come back for the next film and the next one after that.
I would say that most of the people who come to visit me have done what Corey did, and they've just, for their first film, they just did it.
It's expected almost.
And I have, so much respect for them. And they always learn a lot by doing that, and then they have something to show for it. It's most often not something that travels. In other words, it doesn't get into the cinemas. It may or may not have gone to a few festivals, and they probably didn't earn any money from box office, and it may not have even been bought by the movie network or another broadcaster. However, they gained tremendous amount of experience.
The big question I think that's on everyone's minds, and we can kind of we're getting near the end of our run here. What kind of projects are you looking for? And we'll run that one through, and then we have room for one final question after that. Harold Greenberg Fund.
Yeah, I always say good ones. We really look at the creative first, for sure. The bulk of the films we're funding right now are first to second features, so emerging talent, same with the shorts to feature program. We're looking for films that need a little extra development and nurturing. If somebody comes in with a pure genre movie that you can see the marketing plan and that it's going to be sold here, we say that's great. The market should take care of that. The reason that this fund exists is to kind of nurture films that need a little bit of extra money and extra time to come about, but we're interested in all genres and all budget levels.
We're looking for work that is not in progress, so new projects that haven't been started. And for FACT, we're really open. The possibilities are limitless in terms of subject matter. You do have to qualify for a CRTC number. Just the film has to be considered Canadian content according to the guidelines set out by the CRTC. And then for our documentary stream, it's a little bit different. Again, the subject matter is limitless. The stories can be big or small, local, or they can take place in other parts of the country. Even outside of the country, as long as there's a Canadian hook. So it needs a CRTC number as well, and it needs that Canadian hook for bravoFACtual. I don't think there's really anything else to keep in mind in terms of what we're looking for. We don't fund performance pieces anymore. That's something that we did years ago, and sometimes people, you might remember the program that we had on Bravo years ago, a lot of dance work and musical stuff, and so we're looking for linear narrative shorts.
And I should say that I think all of us it has to be Canadian owned and controlled like that. I just took that as a kind of assumption.
For us, definitely the applicant has to be Canadian Ontario resident, but in terms of people working on the project, we're more flexible in terms of what that crew can look like.
And the applicant being the rights holder in terms of that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it has to be Canadian in that sense. And I think what we're really looking for are standalone pieces. So we don't support mini-series. Like I said, we don't support calling card films. We're looking for something that you're really passionate about and that you really need to make now because it speaks to you. So again, it is a peer assessed jury. So it's the jury that decides what excites them. So just something that really conveys your passion about the piece and why you need to get it made.
I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask because I think my colleagues did very well at the question you did ask, because I'm staring at a tripod here and I want to leave everyone with a mental image, which is an image that I keep in mind in every meeting that I have with a creative team. And I would strongly suggest that when you approach any fund, any financier, any distributor, any potential investor, that you also keep the following image in mind. So again, the image is a tripod. Tripod by definition has 3 legs. Without any one of the legs, it's going to fall down. They're equally important. First leg is the creatives. Who's the team? What has each person done before? What's the screenplay? Who's going to be in it? What's the director's vision? Second leg is the financing. How much is this film going to cost? Where am I going to get the money? And how realistic is it that I can raise the money in the time that's available before I intend to go to camera? And the third leg is marketing and distribution. Who's the audience for this film? How am I going to reach them? What other films have been in the market over the past few years that have reached a similar audience? What did it take to get them out to an audience? What platforms did they reach an audience on? And remembering again that each one of those 3 legs is equally important. Do not leave the room from meeting with any of your potential investors without dealing with each one of those 3 legs.
I want to thank you guys all for coming out. It's super important that everybody in the audience today sees that there are multiple ways to get a project made. Hey.
Hello? Yeah, my name is Errol. I've been a stuntman for over 30 years, probably 40. I can't remember. I hit my head so many times. Co-productions. We only literally hit the Canadian content, independent, been financing for independent filmmakers, right? Now, how about, do we do co-productions? Can you just shed a little light on the funding area of co-production?
Yes. Canada has over 50 treaties with other countries. By the way, the United States is not one of those countries. But there's a new treaty with Ireland, there's a new treaty with India, and many of the other countries you might want to work with. I would say, though, that official treaty co-productions are not the way to go for a first or second time filmmaker. It's very, very difficult to arrange a treaty co-pro and needing to pay producers in 2 countries, accountants in 2 countries, lawyers in 2 countries for a budget under around $3 million. So yes, Telefilm funds quite a few co-productions, and in fact, we're the Canadian authority approving official co-productions. And these are tremendously valuable. 2 recent examples from last year, Room and Brooklyn. So Oscar-nominated Canadian international co-productions, using a lot of Canadian talent, bringing a lot of goodwill and attention onto the Canadian community, the Canadian filmmaking community. So really, really valuable, but I really believe it's for later in your career.
It's important that you all in the audience realize that there are people here that can fund projects, but also be aware that there are people like Corey who have bootstrapped projects as well. A lot of you guys in this audience look at paperwork and it's daunting. I wanted to thank Corey for coming out because he put it in pretty clear terms. Crowdfunding is daunting as well. So we want to encourage, I want to encourage filmmakers out there to chase the money as best they can. Certainly helping put those budgets together and putting the gear lists and your quotes together will help you kind of define what we do here. So what I'm hoping to do in my position, now I'm formally introducing myself to you and what I do, is I'm hoping to have more of this through William F. White, bringing people in, funders, filmmakers, successes, to chat with filmmakers, because I think we need this as independent and emerging filmmakers to hear from the voices of the people that are doing this as a profession that we want to get into. So I wanted to thank you all for coming out today. I want to thank our panel. We can give another one. Enjoy Freeze. Thank you.